Hello YouTube. Thought I would do a quick video for you regarding a valve clearance check on a 2013 ZX-6R. I know when we first contemplated doing this ourselves, we weren't sure what it involved. So I thought I would do a quick video to capture the highlights of what it takes to do a valve clearance check. So anybody who is asking the same questions we were, whether or not you can do this, on your own, at home, for the first time, all of the above, this hopefully will answer that question for you. So, started with, some very basic things. You start by taking off the seat. See the seat over there. You remove the side fairings here. You disconnect the battery. You disconnect the power for the fuel pump. The fuel pump is actually located on the bottom side of the fuel tank. You can see the other end of the cord right there. That's just a quick disconnect. And then you remove the fuel tank. Then you remove the air box. You can see the air box over there. And you can see in order to get the air box off, you have to loosen these bolts right here. There's one on either side. And then there's the air suction system that needs to come off. The air suction system is laying around here in multiple pieces because it's being cleaned. That's part of it over there. There was more of it outside. I don't see it at the moment. But in any case, the air suction system comes off. The throttle bodies come off, which are right here. I think the manual calls for disconnecting these cables here. These go over to the throttle. We actually just set up a chair next to it and just kind of set the whole thing over there. Those are kind of a pain to get off. So our workaround is to just set them over there on the side like that. And then you take off the valve cover. The valve cover for us is on the floor over here by the Q-tips. And then the caps come off to the side. You've got two caps over here that need to come off. One is a viewer and the other is so that you can put this that in there, and that's what you'll use to turn the engine to top dead center for the different piston settings. So you find top dead center, and that whole process is explained in the manual, kind of in these two pages, 2-27 and 2-28. And you'll need top dead center for two different locations on the engine for different piston settings, different piston positions, and you'll measure your clearances with those different top dead center locations. Again, that's all explained in these pages right here. And then once you've taken your measurements, we just did earlier today, you can see we've got ours here. After that, you begin the process of, you have to get the camshafts off, which are these shafts right here. To get the camshafts off, you have to pull these caps here, and this has to come off, and the cam chain has to be dealt with. That's sitting down in here. This is important because this has to go back on exactly the way it is when you take it off. So one of the quick ways to get around that is to zip tie the chain to the sprocket over here on each one. You can zip tie it, and then it just retains the setting, and you just kind of set these to the side. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'll shoot a video of that in just a few minutes. And but in summary, those are the basic steps. Certainly it's not as daunting as I thought it was going to be, so you save yourself a lot of money doing it this way. If you can stomach this kind of maintenance on your own, you'll save yourself a good bit of cash. This is probably a $400 to $500 procedure if done at the dealership. So okay, so continuing with a little more detailed information, we have our feeler gauges, and I wanted to give you a sense of what it takes to measure these clearances, to determine what your clearances are at, whether or not you're in or out of spec. So we've got our feeler gauges, and there's a whole bunch of can you show them that real quick? There's a whole bunch of different sizes in there, all different thicknesses, and that's how you determine what your clearance is. So we are in top dead center right now, positioning number 1, and you can see the kind of serpentine pattern for this position. That represents, the black dots represent the valves that you can check in this position, and then these black dots represent the valves that you check in the other top dead center position. So we're going to show you right now real quick the measurement that we have for number 5. You'll see she's got a 0.2, and the 0.2 actually goes all the way through. When she slides it underneath, it slips all the way through and comes out the back. So if you were to move up to the next bigger, thicker gauge, you'll find that it will not go through there. It gets stuck, indicating that your measurement is less than that. So we found ours on this particular one. This is an intake valve. This one is 0.2, and intake valves should be between 0.13 and 0.19, so this one is actually out of spec. So we are going to go through the process of rechecking our measurements. We've already measured everything once. We're going to measure it again just to make sure, and then we'll start tearing this apart and show you, briefly what that looks like. So 0.23, you can see, doesn't go through. So exhaust valve number 1, 0.2 slides through there. In comparison, number 4, it doesn't. So we're estimating that our clearance on number 4 is about 0.18. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. See, that one goes through. So that's how you develop these measurements. So I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but there's a line in there. I just used the this is the T45, I think. Yep, that star socket there, and you put it in over on this side and turn the engine over until you get to top dead center for cylinders number 2 and 4, and you can see there's a line way back in there that lines up with this this kind of machined line that's in the case here. So when those two line up, we're in the next top dead center position, which is for number 2 and 4. So we're going to go ahead and recheck our clearances for cylinders number 2 and 4. Okay, so we're removing the top plates here above the camshafts, and there is a very specific sequence for removing these plates, and it is spelled out in the manual. So she's doing that right now, but just so everybody knows, very important you follow this, otherwise you could damage some very, very, very important parts to your motorcycle. Alright, got the first of the caps off. You can see the camshafts underneath here. Alright, so check this out. When you're taking off these caps, be extremely careful about these sleeves. Some of these bolts actually go through these sleeves, and you'll see they're removable. So when taking off the caps, the top plate, these two are removable as well. Those are going to come out. We'll clean those. That's part of the air suction system. But be very careful. And not every hole has one of these sleeves. You see there's a smaller hole. These smaller ones don't have them, of which there's a bunch over here. But there are some. See them back in here. So very careful, very important that you don't lose any of those in the process of taking off these top plates. See the camshaft starting to rise up? Because there's tension on the chain over here. It's pulling down on this side as that plate is coming up. On the left, the chain is pulling it down and it's lifting it up. That's normal. But what we're going to do next is get some zip strips on that chain. We're going to zip strip that chain to the sprockets so that we don't lose our timing. Alright, got the top plates off. We just put the bolts in there. Got the zip ties on the cam chain. With those zip ties, that'll hold our timing in place so I don't have to use a paint marker or anything to, try to mark the timing. The zip ties will hold everything in position. Alright, so we've got the camshaft set to the side and you can see the buckets now. And we have a magnet, and we're going to use the magnet to pull up the first bucket, and you'll see that once we get the bucket up, the shim is under the bucket on the inside. So that little shim, I'm going to go ahead and take that out. That little shim sits conveniently right there in that depression there. And we have the valve clearance check that we're doing involves ultimately how thick of a shim we need. We have a shim kit here, and after evaluating the clearances and marking our measurements, we'll run a simple calculation to determine which size shim we need to reinstall in all these, underneath all these buckets. It's a shim under bucket design used in most of the sport bike engines. Okay, so we have one of our intake valves is out, number 5. So we've got the shim over here. We're measuring it so we know what our existing thickness is. 1.75 millimeters. So we need that number to figure out what size our new shim needs to be so that our valves are in spec. So this is our collection of shims, and we got to run some numbers, determine what size we need. We'll pull from the collection that we have here and install it over in the bike. So the equation goes like this. So again, we're still using intake valve number 5. Your present shim thickness for us was 1.75. Just move this over here. Plus your measured valve clearance for us was 0.2 minus C, which is, depending on which side you're working on, intake or exhaust, there's a mean value they give you. So for us on the intake side, we're going to use 0.16. And when you run that calculation, A plus B minus C equals D, gives you your new shim thickness. We came up with basically 1.8. So the shim that we reinstall into the bike will be a 1.8. It was a 1.75, now it's a 1.8. And that should put this particular valve back into spec. Alright, there's our shim. Hopefully you can see that, 1.8. We did check it with the caliper. And we need to get some oil on it. But we don't want to get... Here, maybe you could finish that. Yeah, so we need to get some oil on it. And then you have to install the number side. So the side that says 1.8, we got to put face down, facing the lifter. So when you look at it, you won't see the numbers. The numbers go on the other side. That's in the service manual. And then you simply put the bucket back over it. Buckets are a tight fit. Be gentle. Please stand by.
All the other ones go on. This one doesn't want to go on. There it goes.
Right there. Again, be gentle. Don't force it. Bad things will happen. So our air suction dowel pins, that's these guys. Took them out. I'm almost at 30,000 miles on this bike, so got quite a few miles on it. There's just a ton of stuff in here. We're using a Q-tip and some carburetor cleaner to gently clean it out, trying not to, you know, knock everything down into the lines in here, but it's caked. It's caked on everything, and it's sticky and it is hard to get off. These are the pins. You know, after they've been cleaned. Just before this, you could see one kind of soaking in there. It's just really bad. Again, you know, 30,000 miles, so it's seen a lot of use. I don't know if this is to be expected, but that's where I'm at this point. Oh, got oil on the camera. Rats. So we have the camshaft covers on. This one goes on first, and you have to follow the sequence in the diagram here. The torque settings are listed here, and you do a partial tighten on. You start with 52 inch-pounds, follow the sequence, and then after 52 inch-pounds on everything, then you torque them down to 106 inch-pounds. So it's a stepped process. So we got those on in the right sequence, got them torqued, took the zip strips off. Our timing is okay. We turned over the engine, checked the two different top dead center positions, and checked, measured the valve clearances, and everything is within spec now. We've taken the old valve cover gasket off. We have a new valve cover gasket sitting back here, and we'll do that tomorrow. So anyhow, It is a good amount of work, but I know we save a lot of money in labor performing this ourselves rather than taking it to a shop. So I'll do one final video after we get it back together. We'll put the gasket on and the valve cover back on and put all the parts and pieces back on, and we'll run a video for when we fire it up for the first time. Hang on. So after the valve adjustment, spark plug replacement, air filter, anything else? Am I missing anything?
That sounds good.
Upcoming throttle body synchronization. So the synchronization hasn't been done yet, but it will be after we determine the results from this are good. Hit it.
What did I do?
Alright, so that noise, something very important, we forgot to retighten. This is the cam chain tensioner. This is an aftermarket one that I installed. This is the manual tensioner. The auto tensioner that was on here we took off. We had some problems with it. So forgot to tighten this back down. So it came down here. Alright, so the manual cam chain tensioner, if you listen close, got it adjusted, but I'll loosen it and then you're going to hear the tick. Hear it? I tighten it a hair, the tick goes away. That's the point you need to find when you're setting the tensioner. That spot right where the ticking goes away. I've got the nut off right now, but I'm going to go ahead and kill this. Alright, cool. And then we'll tighten this down here.